I've heard rumors. Whisperings cut short as I turned the corner. Disquieting eye contact between people I didn't even think were acquainted. They know something I don't. They've shared something. I've exhausted myself trying to imagine what. I could be paranoid, I could be manifesting my fear of being left out into a mirage of workplace esprit de corps. But there's something about the way that they lunch. I can't shake the feeling that some kind of new sensibility is moving through the office. Maybe I'm immune. But then, one day, she meets my gaze as I look up from staring at the trickling rivulet very slowly filling my off-brand Nalgene. I feel the carpet throbbing under my feet. What are you doing this weekend? I am dozing in the endless whirl of tamaracks beyond the high beams. No one has spoken for hours. My eyes are relentlessly drying in the blast of the car's heater, but I don't have the nerve to say anything. I know these people only by their office nicknames. In the back, there's Downstairs Mark and Silent Lindsay. Our driver, Julie, is the only Julie, so she's just Julie. Julie invited me, so I feel some allegiance to her, even though she's only spoken to me the one time. That's more than I can say for the others. The car slows. Julie is grimly squinting into the smear of naked trees, looking for an opening. I feel a little thrill as the car turns onto a narrow track, cutting through the unbroken snow into the woods. As we approach a clearing in the trees, I see a cabin bathed in moonlight. It looks like a drawing you'd find on a jug of maple syrup, complete with a plume of smoke curling from the chimney. That looks cozy, I say, breaking the silence. Downstairs Mark leans up from the back seat and firmly places his mittened hand on my shoulder, squeezing me into submission. I catch Silent Lindsay in the rearview mirror, her eyes fixed on my reflection, daring me to speak. I remain quiet as we pull up to a gate made of rough-hewn timbers. After what feels like an eternity, the gates slowly creak open, moved by some invisible mechanism. Julie creeps the car forward, pulling to a stop in front of a large pine tree and turning off the ignition. We exit the car wordlessly. As the others trudge up a path in the snow leading towards the building, I survey the snow-covered silence all around me, and I turn to follow. Ducking through the doorway, the interior of the cabin is pitch black but warm. As my senses adjust to the darkness, I notice my companions are standing together with their backs to me, just beyond the threshold, as if waiting for something, or for someone. My guts tighten with a sudden realization that I have no idea where I am. And this might be a weird sex thing. A great column of flames ignites, sucking the air out of the room and filling it with hot light. The fire roars in the hulking fireplace, rising from the center of the room like an altar, the chimney a tower of absurd cartoon boulders winding up into the rafters. I can't believe how impossibly huge it is inside this cabin. It looks so small on the approach. It evokes a cathedral, one built of those fake plastic logs you sit in on rides with names like the Lumber Tumbler or Calamity River. A circle of figures steps from the shadows, encircling us, hooded in cowls of chunky black and red checked wool. Their faces are shadow holes in the firelight relief. I turn to my coworkers but find no purchase in their faces. Their glazed eyes reflect only the dancing flames. "Remove your clothes," a disembodied voice intones. As the others are briskly unlacing boots and unbuttoning shirts, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is definitely a weird sex thing. A switch in the deepest part of my brain clicks woodenly into the flight position, but as I rear to the door, I see a hooded figure standing guard. There is no escape. My body slumps in resignation, and I begin to undress, trying not to look at the groins and butts of my coworkers as we drop our clothes into the dinghy-sized birch bark basket provided by a pair of the plaid monks. "Receive the goads!" More hooded figures step from the darkness and walk towards us, carrying bouquets of thin, leafy branches. They lay them on the outstretched hands of my fellow initiates, pressing their fingers closed around the bunches. I look into the sepulchral hood of the figure now forcing me to take the sticks. I recognized the black eyes of the sales manager called Fantasy Football Tony, but before I can be sure, a rough sack is forced over my head from behind. I gasp in this new claustrophobic darkness, my arms flailing in front of me, searching for something solid. Tony's hands, perhaps? But they are now as much a fantasy as his football. Take them! Where? I wonder, trying to hold down the panic seizing me. Beyond the amber veil. Unseen hands pull me forward, and I try to remain on both feet as I plunge through the darkness. I feel a blast of freezing air, and soon my bare feet are crunching on jagged snow. I'm wincing in the cold and losing feeling in my toes as I'm pulled along. We stop. The hands release their grip. The hood is ripped off, and I am blinded by the cold light of the moon. I look around wildly, and as my eyes adjust, I see my office mates standing in a row beside me, their faces frozen in placid smiles, staring straight ahead. I follow their unshivering gaze, and then I see it. An enormous animal, or a statue of an animal, a hulking antlered colossus lit from behind by a corona of sickly blue moonlight. It towers above the snowy field, woven together from the trunks of burnt, twisted trees. It rumbles and creaks as it sways over us, animated from within. It begins to lurch forward. Creaking under the great weight of the antlers, the huge head lowers until its car-sized muzzle lands booming on the snow. I feel the earth move under me as a cloud of snow kicks up, crystallizing into a haze, refracting the moon glow. I realize that I'm still holding the fistful of branches when a great hissing blast of steam is forced from the nostrils of the beast. The snout begins to lift as the jaws open. Lit from within by an orange glow, the opening dilates slowly into a cave-like portal. We are prodded forward by our hooded guards, and as we approach, stairs can be seen, leading up and away into the throat of what I now realize is a huge moose. It must be the size of our office building. The stairs climb endlessly through a narrowing shaft. The rednesses of light intensify as we climb. Julie's naked rump is oscillating laboriously directly in front of my face. The temperature increases as the twisting corridor contracts, until we have to take turns crawling through an orange aperture no bigger than a pizza box. I'm the last in line. Sensing my hesitation, the tartan friar on duty points silently at the hole. I squeeze out on the other side into a vast wooden cavern lined in reddish planks. Long benches climb along the walls like bleachers, and seated in the rows are dozens of naked figures staring at me in silence. A massive cast-iron stove sits at the end of the room like a black idol. My gut sinks under the weight of grim recognition. I know these people. There's Kyle, the receptionist, Esther from accounting, Samantha and Noah from IT. Is that James? The intern? They all gesture in unison towards a bench high in the upper reaches. My companions bow their heads dutifully and begin to climb through the bodies. I am compelled to follow, weaving upward through the sea of macabre nudity. As we take our seats, a man at the front stands up before the stove. He lights a torch and holds it aloft. Even from this distance, I can tell it's Addison, our sadistic branch manager. "Now let the veil be lifted," he bellows. The throng of naked bodies raises their arms towards the ceiling as Addison heaves open the iron door of the stove. I wince at the groaning squeal of the hinges as the torch is plunged into the belly of the oven. The door is slammed shut with a final clank, and a blast of rippling heat shudders across my skin. Each successive wave is impossibly hotter than the last. Addison stands before the boiler, now a glowing red caldera, lashing it with buckets of scented liquid. His face dripping, twisted with malevolence. The steam is collecting around our perch in a suffocating cloud of hotness. I struggle to breathe, and as the minutes crawl by, twisted hallucinations begin to float across my eyes. My face feels like meat. The mass of bodies below us writhes under the heat in various states of agony and ecstasy, and in a scene reminiscent of a Hieronymus Bosch painting, have taken to whipping each other's backs with branches provided, the leaves withered into a cruel cat o' nine tails. I am struggling to retain consciousness, but I can feel my mind sinking into the torrid miasma. In the final moments, clinging to whatever sense of identity I have left, I recall Julie's small hands gripping the steering wheel, never wavering from their 10 and 2 position. I reach over to take her slippery hand into mine, but she slashes wildly at me with her fistful of sticks, and then everything melts away. Good morning, folks! Julie's assured sing-song larking across the tops of the cubicles. Already finished wrangling the morning's emails, I take a sip of coffee and turn to the bank of windows. The office park unfolds across the horizon. It appears to me a vast savanna, dotted with grazing antelope, and there, in the distance, a pride of yellow lions blazing in the sun.